Sizing of solar charge controller. In this session, we're going to be talk about how we can decide the rating of the solar charge controller, because it is very important whenever we design any solar home system. So that time we have to properly size the rating of the solar charge controller. Then we can just utilize that solar charge controller to be inclusion inside the system actually. Basically, the PV solar charge controller are rated and the size depending upon the solar array current in terms of the ampere and the solar system voltage or the battery bank voltage that is required to be included. So basically, what amount of the solar array we are using and what amount of the current we are getting from the solar array and what battery bank voltage or the system voltage we have decided for designing of the solar home system, these parameter decides what rating of the solar charge controller we have to be included in the system. Therefore, basically the solar charge controller sizing basically involves getting a charge controller big enough to handle the amount of the power and the current produced by the solar energy systems. So that is why whenever we size any kind of the solar charge controller, it should able to handle the current which is coming from the solar array and what amount of the current should be passed from the solar charge controller so that the proper charging of the battery bank will going to get happen over here. Most of the cases when we see the market rating of the solar charge controller, it can be get the voltage range of the 12 volt, 24 volt and the 48 volt. These are something standard voltages are there actually when we purchase any kind of the solar charge controller. Amperage rating can be vary from the 1 ampere up to the 60 ampere and the voltage rating is varying from the 6 ampere up to the 6 volt up to the 60 volt over here actually. So whenever we see the data sheet of the any solar charge controller, we will find some kind of the standard voltage it has been decided and then we can just design the solar charge controller or the select solar charge controller by doing some kind of the calculations over here. So if our solar system volt will have a 12 volt and the ampere of the solar array is the 14 ampere, then whatever solar charge controller will going to select from the market, it should able to handle at least the current of the 14 ampere over here. So whenever we just learn on an average the how to select the solar charge controller. So if our solar system will have the 12 volt of the standard system voltage and the solar array is coming with the approximate current up to the 14 ampere over here, then our solar charge controller should able to handle at least the 14 ampere of the current. But we are just multiplying this particular rating of the current by the design factor, that is a 25% of the extra factors we are taking over here. It is due to the light reflection, due to the sporadic increase in the current level can occur in the system, so that if I want to need to size the particular solar charge controller, the additional factor we have to multiply, that is the 1.25 or the 25% extra we have to be add in the system. So now if the current from the array, if we are getting up to the 14 amps, so multiply by this 1.25 over here. So basically in this case, whatever the current rating that we are getting, that extra rating also we are adding over here. So though our array is giving us the 14 ampere, but at least we have to select the solar charge controller who can able to handle the current of the 17.5 ampere. So this is a calculatory value we are getting actually whenever we size the solar charge controller. But when we see the market standard actually, in market, some of our standard solar charge controllers are available over here. So in this case study, we can just go for the 12 volt and the 20 ampere rating of the solar charge controller over here. Now we're going to see one example of sizing of the solar charge controller. For example, the solar array is having the capacity of the 900 watt. So if we are sizing any solar array and if it is having the sizing capacity of the 900 watt, which is close to the 1 kilowatt over here actually, and the system voltage of the battery bank is the 24 volt. So whatever the battery bank we are using in a system will have the voltage of the 24 volt. Calculate the sizing of the solar charge controller. So in this case, we can use this formula. Current rating of the solar charge controller is rating of the solar array in terms of the watt. So in this case, it is a 900 watt is the rating of the solar array. divided by the battery bank voltage or the system voltage in this case. So it is a 24 volt is the battery bank voltage. We can take it over here. So when we do this particular calculation, we are getting the current rating of the 37.5 amps. So basically our solar charge controller minimum at least can able to handle such amount of the current whenever current is passed from the solar charge controller. But by multiplying this current rating by the additional factor of the 1.25, we are getting the answer of 46.87 ampere, which is a final rating of the solar charge controller. Now we see the market standard, how the solar charge controller has been available. So according to the market standard, we'll have the 24 volt and the 50 ampere solar charge controller can be available. So in this case, for this corresponding case studies, we can select the 24 volt and the 50 ampere solar charge controller for designing of the solar home systems over case study over here.